Taoiseach, the farmers who continue to protest, who continue with their pickets today outside the meat processing factories, are fighting for their livelihoods and for the future of the family farm, and your words will offer them very little hope and very little comfort. In the midst of the figures that you rattled off, Taoiseach, you didn't and you should have mentioned that many beef farmers make less than €10,000 a year. Despite doing most of the work, farmers only receive approximately 20% of the sale price of beef. And the current price, as you have set out for a kilo of beef, is €3.45, and that is below break-even point. So Brexit looms, and the reality is that Irish beef farmers are now struggling for their very survival. That's why there are pickets on the gate. Many see this campaign as their last stand before their livelihoods are gone forever, and this crisis didn't come out of the blue, Taoiseach. It's been taking shape for decades. This dispute is a direct result of corporate greed and the inequalities which have long existed in the market. Farmers are price takers, not price makers. And in fact, prices are decided by a very small and very powerful group of people. Something that doesn't feel right, doesn't look right, doesn't smell right. Fairness and fair play do not exist in this market or in the experience of beef farmers. And as a result of that, the industry is on the brink. While the livelihood of beef farmers is being ruined, as you said, thousands of factory workers have been laid off. Only this morning we heard of 350 temporary layoffs at a plant in Cahir in County Tipperary. And much like the struggling farmers, these workers have bills to pay, they have children to feed, and the loss of their paycheck is absolutely devastating. I don't think farmers want to be on the picket line. I think they want to be farming. I know that factory workers want to be back at work, earning their living. But this isn't going to happen, Taoiseach, unless the principle of fair play is brought to bear. I acknowledge that the 2 rounds of talks so far have delivered some progress regarding bonus payments and a grid review. However, the core issue of the base price being offered to farmers remains. And there has to be a solution to this, Taoiseach. There is a solution. The way to bring this dispute to an end is for the highly profitable meat factories to agree a base price increase with farmers. It seems to me now clear that Minister Creed needs to convene again a new round of talks at which farmers' organisations and processors can discuss this increase in base price. And it's also clear, by the way, that there has to be support offered to the workers who have been laid off. So, Taoiseach, do you agree that meat processors should sit down again? Do you believe that they should agree an increased baseline price with farmers? And will Minister Creed convene a new round of talks to facilitate such a negotiation and agreement?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Thanks very much, Deputy. I think, as I pointed out earlier, the price that Irish farmers receive for beef at the factory gate is roughly the same price received by European farmers at factory gates all across Europe. It's roughly the same average price across Europe, and it's lower outside of Europe. And that's the way commodity prices often work. They're set by the market, a function of supply and demand. But it is a price that's too low. It's well below the cost of production for farmers, and that is the underlying problem that has given rise to this dispute and to these difficulties. Minister Creed has acted. He convened and chaired talks. He secured an agreement that will bring about greater transparency, an agreement that brings about higher premiums, an agreement that ensures that no legal action will be taken against protesters and any existing action will be removed, and crucially now allowing the establishment and recognising producer organisations, allowing farmers to band together and to negotiate with meat factories for a proper contract and a proper price, and that's what needs to happen next. The agreement made has been endorsed by the Minister, by the meat industry and by the 6 farm organisations representing the vast majority of farmers in Ireland. And I welcome the fact that the Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Martin and Fianna Fáil, have endorsed that agreement. I didn't hear Sinn Féin endorsing it, and I really hope you will, because if you want those 3,500 workers to get back to work, who you mentioned, then the factories need to reopen. And if you want farmers beef farmers and indeed sheep farmers to be able to get their animals to the factories, to be able to get any payment at all, well then the agreement should be supported by all of us in this House, and I'd ask you to do so.
McDonald.
Taoiseach, I think that's a very, very disappointing response from you. You see, it matters not a whit whether Micheál Martin or you or anybody else here endorses this agreement if the agreement is not sellable and doesn't work for the farmers who are out on the picket line. That's actually what matters. I'm very disappointed that you tried to use this issue to poke a party political fracas here. I don't think that's appropriate. There are actually 6,000 workers that have been laid off temporarily, 6,000 workers that want to get back to work. So you describe all that has been achieved in the round of negotiation. I acknowledge in my initial remarks that progress had been made. But the issue of the base price has not been addressed. And there's no point in telling farmers that they can act collectively and at some point in the future achieve this price increase. They need it now. I've only been on one picket line in Cavan, in County Cavan, with farmers who told me, we either get this sorted now or we will not be in business next year. So pushing this issue down the pipe is not going to work. And I have to say to you, Taoiseach, by way of my final remark, Ceann Comhairle, I think it's very unedifying for you to issue the kind of threat that you've issued to farmers. Go with this or you'll get nothing. That's not the way to sort this out. That's not the way to arrive at a solution. Neither is an open letter posted on Facebook. With all due respect to the Minister, we need a new round of talks. We need rationality, common sense, goodwill, respect for the farmers, respect for the workers. All of this can be done. It will only be done through a new round of talks.
Thank you very much. Deputy Taoiseach.
As I mentioned earlier, we've had 2 rounds of talks. Those talks concluded this weekend with an agreement endorsed by the Minister, the meat industry and the 6 farm organisations representing the vast majority of farmers in this country. And that is where we are today. The base price, as I explained earlier, is roughly the same across Europe. It's a market price, largely a function of supply and demand. There is no legal way to fix a price. That isn't how it's done. It's not legal to do that. What is possible, though, is for farmers to join producer organisations who can then negotiate a price and proper contracts with the meat factories. In the same way any producer negotiates a price with a potential buyer. That's the way it is done. But that can't be done at the moment when the factories aren't operating. So the factories need to be allowed to reopen. The producer organisations need to be allowed to negotiate contracts and negotiate prices. And those people, the figure I have is 3,500 and may well be higher by now. As many as 8,000 people could lose their jobs as a consequence of these protests and these blockades, and those people need to be enabled to get back to work.